Mother Bear slept on the hospital floor. Beside a crib, what happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The clock on the pediatric ward wall ticked past midnight when Nurse Riley Chen made her routine check through the dimly lit corridors of Maplewood General Hospital. The sound of her soft-soled shoes against the polished floor created a gentle rhythm that had become as familiar to her as her own heartbeat over the past 5 years. She carried a small flashlight, keeping the beam low to avoid disturbing the sleeping patients. As Riley approached room 314, something made her pause. There was an unusual stillness in the air, different from the typical quiet of the night shift. She pressed her ear against the door, listening for any signs of distress from baby Marcus, the 3-day-old infant who had been born with complications that required extended monitoring. His young parents, Zara and Camden Torres, had reluctantly gone home just hours earlier after the doctor assured them their son was stable. Riley slowly pushed open the door, expecting to see the familiar sight of the tiny crib surrounded by medical equipment. Instead, her breath caught in her throat. There, lying on the cold hospital floor beside the crib, was an enormous brown bear. The massive creature's fur rose and fell with each steady breath. Her body positioned protectively next to where baby Marcus slept peacefully. For a moment, Riley wondered if she was experiencing some kind of hallucination brought on by too many consecutive night shifts. She blinked hard, but the bear remained exactly where she was. The animal's eyes were closed, but there was something about her posture that suggested she was completely aware of everything happening around her. One of her large paws rested just inches from the crib's base, as if she had deliberately positioned herself to be as close as possible to the sleeping infant. Riley's hands trembled as she slowly backed away from the doorway. Her mind raced with questions that seemed impossible to answer. How had a wild bear entered the hospital undetected? The building had security cameras, locked doors, and staff members who should have noticed something as obvious as a several hundred-pound animal wandering through the hallways. Yet here she was, looking at undeniable proof that the impossible had somehow occurred. The bear's breathing created a low, rumbling sound that seemed to harmonize with the gentle hum of the baby's monitoring equipment. Marcus remained completely calm, his tiny chest rising and falling in the perfect rhythm of healthy sleep. There was no sign of fear or distress from the infant, which only added to the surreal nature of what Riley was witnessing. As she continued to observe from the doorway, Riley noticed details that made the situation even more puzzling. The bear's fur showed signs of recent travel through dense forest. Small twigs and leaves clung to her coat, and there were traces of mud on her paws that had left faint prints on the usually spotless hospital floor. Her size suggested she was fully mature, likely a mother herself, which raised even more questions about her presence here. The baby monitor attached to Marcus's tiny wrist showed all normal readings. His heart rate was steady, his breathing regular, and his temperature within the perfect range. In fact, the readings looked better than they had been during the earlier part of the evening, when he had shown signs of restlessness that concerned the medical staff. Riley realized she needed to alert someone, but she found herself hesitant to move. There was something profoundly peaceful about the scene before her, despite its absolute impossibility. The bear showed no signs of aggression or threat. If anything, her presence seemed to be having a calming effect on the infant. The question was whether this strange guardian would remain peaceful when other people arrived, or if the situation would quickly turn dangerous. Taking one final look at the unlikely pair, Riley carefully closed the door and hurried toward the nurse's station. Her mind was already working through the complex problem of how to handle a situation that had no precedent in her medical training or experience. Who should she call first? Security? Animal control? The baby's parents? Each option carried risks that could potentially put the infant in greater danger. As she reached for the phone, Riley caught sight of her own reflection in the darkened window. Her face showed the shock and confusion of someone who had just witnessed something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the world. The night had started like any other, but she had the distinct feeling that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Riley's fingers hovered over the phone keypad, but before she could dial, a soft sound from down the hallway made her freeze. It was the gentle whoosh of the elevator doors opening, followed by familiar footsteps. Dr. Marcus Valdez, the head of pediatrics, was making his own late-night rounds. Riley's heart pounded as she realized she had mere seconds to decide how to handle this situation. "Riley, everything quiet tonight?" Dr. Valdez called out as he approached the nurse's station. His voice carried the tired but caring tone of someone who had spent countless nights ensuring the safety of his youngest patients. "Dr. Valdez, I need to tell you something, but you're not going to believe it," Riley said, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced toward room 314, then back to the doctor. "There's a situation with baby Marcus that I've never encountered before." Dr. Valdez set down his coffee cup and gave Riley his full attention. He had worked with her long enough to know that she was not someone who panicked easily or made dramatic statements without cause. "What kind of situation?" Riley took a deep breath, knowing how insane her next words would sound. "There's a bear in Marcus's room, a full-grown bear lying on the floor next to his crib. She's been there for at least 10 minutes and she's not moving, not threatening anyone. She's just watching over him." The doctor's expression shifted from concern to confusion to something that looked almost like disbelief. "Riley, I need you to repeat that. Did you say a bear?" "A mother bear, from the looks of her. She's enormous, but she's completely calm. Marcus is sleeping peacefully, and his vitals are actually better than they were earlier. I know how this sounds, but I need you to see this for yourself before we decide what to do." Dr. Valdez studied Riley's face carefully. In his 15 years of practice, he had learned to read people well, and everything about Riley's demeanor suggested she was telling the truth. "Show me," he said simply. They walked together down the hallway, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. As they approached room 314, Dr. Valdez noticed something he had missed earlier. There were indeed faint paw prints on the floor, barely visible but unmistakably there. The prints led from the direction of the emergency exit stairwell toward Marcus's room. Riley carefully opened the door, and Dr. Valdez peered inside. What he saw made him question his own sanity. The bear was exactly as Riley had described, lying peacefully beside the crib. Her massive form took up a significant portion of the small room's floor space, but she had positioned herself in a way that didn't block access to the medical equipment. "This is impossible, Doctor," Valdez whispered. But even as he spoke the words, he couldn't deny what his eyes were showing him. The bear's presence was undeniable, and even more surprising was the complete absence of any signs of distress from baby Marcus. As they watched, something even more extraordinary happened. Marcus began to stir slightly, the way babies do when they're transitioning between sleep cycles. Without opening her eyes, the bear let out an incredibly soft, low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. The sound was so gentle that it was barely audible, but its effect on Marcus was immediate. The baby settled back into deep sleep, his tiny features relaxing completely. Dr. Valdez felt his breath catch in his throat. He had witnessed something that defied every principle of wildlife behavior he thought he understood. Wild bears, especially mothers, were known to be unpredictable and potentially dangerous around humans. Yet this bear was displaying behavior that suggested not just tolerance but active care for a human infant. "How long has she been here?" Dr. Valdez asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I discovered her about 15 minutes ago, but she could have been there longer." The night security guard, Tommy, did his rounds at 11:30 and didn't report anything unusual. That means she arrived sometime between then and midnight. Dr. Valdez checked his watch. It was now 12:45 in the morning. "We need to check the security footage, but first, I want to observe her behavior a little longer. If she's been here for over an hour without showing any signs of aggression, there might be something else going on here." They stood in the doorway for several more minutes, watching the unlikely pair. The bear's breathing remained steady and calm, and Marcus continued to sleep peacefully. Dr. Valdez noticed that the baby's color looked better than it had earlier in the evening. And when he checked the monitor readings from the doorway, he was surprised to see that all of Marcus's vital signs were within optimal ranges. "Riley, I need you to stay here and continue monitoring the situation. Don't go into the room, but keep watching from the doorway. I'm going to check the security footage and see if I can figure out how she got in here. If anything changes, if she shows any sign of agitation or if Marcus appears to be in distress, call me immediately." Riley nodded, though she felt a mix of fear and fascination that made it difficult to focus on anything else. As Dr. Valdez hurried toward the security office, she settled into a chair just outside room 314, where she could maintain a clear view of both the bear and the baby. The minutes ticked by with an almost surreal quality. The bear remained motionless except for her steady breathing, and Marcus slept with the kind of deep, peaceful rest that had been elusive for him during his first few days of life. Riley found herself wondering about the bear's own story. Where had she come from? Did she have cubs of her own? What could possibly have driven her to seek out this particular baby in this particular place? At one point, Marcus made a small sound in his sleep, and Riley watched in amazement as the bear's ears twitched slightly in response. The animal was clearly attuned to every sound the baby made, ready to respond if needed. It was the kind of vigilant attention that Riley had only seen in human mothers watching over their newborns. Dr. Valdez returned 20 minutes later, his face showing a mixture of confusion and concern. "The security footage shows something incredible," he said, keeping his voice low. "She didn't break in. She entered through the emergency exit door on the ground floor at 11:52. But here's the thing that doesn't make sense. The door was opened from the inside first." Riley turned to look at him, her confusion deepening. From the inside? But who would have opened it? That's what I can't figure out. The footage shows the door opening, but there's no clear view of who opened it. Then, a few seconds later, the bear walks through as if she knew exactly where she was going. She went straight to the elevator, and somehow the elevator doors opened for her. She rode it to the 3rd floor and walked directly to Marcus's room. The implications of what Dr. Valdez was describing sent a chill down Riley's spine. "Are you saying someone let her in? Someone who knew she was coming?" "I don't know what I'm saying. The footage raises more questions than it answers. But there's something else. I called the Forest Service to report the situation, and they told me something interesting. There have been reports of a mother bear with unusual behavior in the area for the past 3 days. She's been seen near the edge of town, but she's not foraging or showing typical bear behavior. She's been moving with what they described as purpose, as if she was looking for something specific." Riley felt a strange tingling sensation as she processed this information. 3 days. That's exactly how long Marcus has been in the hospital. Dr. Valdez nodded slowly. "The timing is too coincidental to ignore. There's something connecting this bear to this baby, And until we figure out what it is, we need to be very careful about how we handle this situation." As if responding to their conversation, the bear shifted slightly, adjusting her position to face more directly toward the crib. Her eyes remained closed, but there was something about the movement that suggested she was aware of their presence in the doorway. Marcus stirred again, and once more, the bear's soft rumbling sound seemed to soothe him back to sleep. Riley and Dr. Valdez exchanged glances, both of them recognizing that they were witnessing something that would be impossible to explain to anyone who hadn't seen it themselves. The night was far from over, and they both had the feeling that they were only beginning to understand the mystery that had arrived at their hospital. As they continued their vigil, the sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. Night security guard Tommy Brennan was making his second round of the evening, his flashlight beam dancing across the walls as he walked toward them. Tommy had been working at Maplewood General for over a decade, and his thorough approach to security had made him a trusted member of the night staff. "Dr. Valdez, Riley, everything okay up here?" Tommy asked, noticing their unusual positioning outside room 314. "I saw the lights were on longer than usual during my last pass." Dr. Valdez and Riley exchanged another look, both realizing they would need to bring Tommy into their extraordinary situation. "Tommy, we need to show you something, but I want you to prepare yourself. What you're about to see is going to challenge everything you think you know about hospital security." Tommy's expression grew serious as he approached them. He had seen Dr. Valdez handle countless emergencies over the years, and the doctor's tone suggested this was something far beyond a typical medical situation. "What are we dealing with?" "Look into room 314, but do it very slowly and quietly," Riley instructed, "and whatever you do, don't make any sudden movements." Tommy carefully peered through the doorway, and his reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, and he took an involuntary step backward, his hand moving instinctively toward his radio. "Holy Mother of... is that a real bear?" "Very real," Dr. Valdez confirmed. "And she's been there for over an hour, watching over baby Marcus. We've been trying to figure out how she got in, and the security footage raises some very disturbing questions." Tommy's mind raced as he processed what he was seeing. "I've been doing security rounds for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like this. How did she get past all our security measures? The doors, the cameras, the alarm systems?" Dr. Valdez pulled out his phone and showed Tommy the relevant portions of the security footage. As Tommy watched, his confusion deepened. "This doesn't make sense. That emergency door has an alarm system. If someone opened it from the inside, it should have triggered an alert, but I didn't receive any notifications tonight." "Check your security logs," Riley suggested. "Maybe there's something in the system records that wasn't immediately visible." Tommy pulled out his tablet and began scrolling through the night's security reports. After several minutes of searching, he looked up with an expression of complete bewilderment. According to the system logs, the emergency door alarm was manually disabled at 11:47 tonight, but there's no record of who disabled it or why. The three of them stood in silence, processing this new information. Someone with access to the hospital's security system had deliberately made it possible for the bear to enter undetected. This revelation transformed their situation from a bizarre animal encounter into something much more complex and potentially dangerous. "Who has the authorization to disable security alarms?" Dr. Valdez asked. Tommy consulted his tablet again. "Only a handful of people. The head of security, the hospital administrator, the chief of staff, and a few senior department heads. But none of them are scheduled to be here tonight, and there's no record of anyone using their access codes." As they discussed the security implications, none of them noticed that the bear had opened her eyes and was now watching them from inside the room. Her gaze was calm but alert, and there was an intelligence in her expression that seemed almost human in its depth. Riley was the first to notice the change. "She's awake," she whispered, causing the others to turn their attention back to room 314. The bear remained in her resting position, but her eyes tracked their movements with careful attention. When Dr. Valdez took a small step closer to the doorway, the bear's ears flicked forward, but she showed no signs of aggression or fear. Instead, her gaze shifted between the three humans and the sleeping baby, as if she was evaluating their intentions. "She's assessing us," Dr. Valdez observed quietly. "Look at how she's watching our body language, our proximity to the baby. She's trying to determine if we're a threat." Marcus chose that moment to wake up, his tiny arms stretching as he transitioned from sleep to wakefulness. The baby's eyes opened, and he made the soft cooing sounds that newborns use to communicate their needs. The bear's response was immediate and remarkable. She lifted her massive head and made a series of gentle sounds that were unlike anything any of them had ever heard from a wild animal. The sounds were soft, melodic, and incredibly soothing. They seemed to be a form of communication directed specifically at the baby. Marcus turned his head toward the bear, and his expression showed no fear, only curiosity. The baby's tiny hand waved in the air, and the bear carefully moved her snout closer to the crib, maintaining just enough distance to avoid physical contact while still being close enough for the baby to see her. "This is incredible," Riley breathed. "It's like they're having a conversation." Tommy was recording everything on his phone, knowing that no one would believe what they were witnessing without visual proof. "I've never seen animal behavior like this. It's like she recognizes him, like she knows him somehow." Dr. Valdez was thinking along the same lines. "Tommy, I need you to pull up all the information we have about Marcus's birth and his family. Where were his parents living before he was born? What's their background? There might be something in their history that connects them to this bear." As Tommy began searching through the hospital's patient records, Dr. Valdez noticed something else that made his pulse quicken. The bear had a distinctive marking on her left shoulder, a patch of lighter brown fur that formed an almost perfect crescent shape. It was the kind of unique marking that would make her easily identifiable to anyone who had encountered her before. "Riley, look at that marking on her shoulder. Have you ever seen anything like that before?" Riley studied the bear more carefully. "It's definitely unusual. That kind of natural marking is rare. If someone had encountered this bear before, they would definitely remember her." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching voices from down the hallway. Dr. Valdez recognized the voices immediately. It was Sarah Chen, the chief of staff, and James Morrison, the hospital administrator. Both of them were supposed to be off duty, which made their presence at nearly 2 a.m. highly unusual. "What are they doing here?" Riley whispered. Dr. Valdez held up a hand, signaling for quiet. He moved closer to the hallway to listen to their conversation as they approached. "Are you certain the situation is contained?" Dr. Chen's voice carried clearly down the corridor. "As certain as I can be," Morrison replied. "The security modifications I made should have given us the window we needed. The question now is whether our visitor will accomplish what we hoped." Dr. Valdez felt his blood run cold as he realized the implications of what he was hearing. Dr. Chen and Morrison were somehow involved in the bear's presence at the hospital. They had deliberately compromised security to allow her entry, which meant this wasn't a random occurrence. It was planned. He quickly gestured for Riley and Tommy to move away from the doorway and into the nearby supply closet, where they could observe without being seen. From their new position, they watched as Dr. Chen and Morrison approached room 314. "The readings look promising," Dr. Chen said, checking her phone. Marcus's vitals have been consistently stable since she arrived. His oxygen saturation is at levels we haven't seen since his birth, and his heart rate variability suggests he's experiencing deeper, more restorative sleep. Morrison nodded. The connection appears to be working exactly as we hoped. The question is how long we can maintain this situation before it becomes impossible to manage. Dr. Valdez, Riley, and Tommy exchanged shocked glances in the confines of the supply closet. It was becoming clear that Dr. Chen and Morrison not only knew about the bear's presence, but had actively facilitated it. More disturbing was their suggestion that they had expected some kind of medical benefit for baby Marcus. "What happens when the parents return in the morning?" Morrison asked. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Dr. Chen replied. "For now, let's just monitor the situation and document everything. If this works the way we believe it will, it could change everything we understand about healing and human-animal connections." As the two administrators entered room 314 to observe the bear and baby, Dr. Valdez realized that their quiet night shift had uncovered something far more complex than a simple animal intrusion. They were witnessing what appeared to be some kind of medical experiment, one that involved a wild bear and a vulnerable newborn baby. The bear seemed to recognize Dr. Chen and Morrison, her body language suggesting familiarity rather than the wariness she might show toward strangers. This raised even more questions about the relationship between the hospital staff and this remarkable animal. Tommy was still recording everything, his hands shaking as he tried to capture evidence of what they were witnessing. Riley found herself wondering how many other patients might have been involved in similar situations, and whether Marcus's parents had any idea that their son was part of what appeared to be an unauthorized medical trial. The night was far from over, and each new revelation seemed to deepen the mystery surrounding the bear's presence at Maplewood General Hospital. From their hiding place in the supply closet, Dr. Valdez, Riley, and Tommy watched as Dr. Chen pulled out a sophisticated tablet device that none of them recognized. She began taking readings and measurements while speaking in hushed tones to Morrison. The bear remained calm throughout their presence, which further confirmed that this was not her first encounter with these hospital administrators. "The neurological response patterns are even stronger than we anticipated," Dr. Chen whispered to Morrison as she studied her device. "Look at these brainwave readings. Marcus is experiencing the kind of deep, healing sleep that typically only occurs in optimal therapeutic environments." Morrison leaned closer to examine the tablet. "How are you getting neurological readings?" "We didn't install any additional monitoring equipment." Dr. Chen smiled and pointed to what appeared to be a small, nearly invisible sensor attached to the baby's hospital gown. "Microsensors. They've been monitoring his brain activity, stress hormones, and cellular regeneration rates since the bear arrived. The data is being transmitted wirelessly to our research database." Dr. Valdez felt his hands clench into fists as he realized the full scope of what they were witnessing. Baby Marcus had been turned into an unwitting subject in some kind of medical experiment, and his parents had no idea. The ethical violations were staggering, but what made it even worse was that the experiment seemed to be working. Tommy continued recording everything, making sure to capture both the conversation and the evidence of unauthorized medical equipment. Riley noticed that her own hands were trembling as she processed the implications of what they were discovering. "How long have you been planning this?" Morrison asked Dr. Chen. "Ever since we received the preliminary research from the Institute. Their studies on human-animal bonding and accelerated healing showed promise, but they needed real-world testing. When Marcus was born with his complications, and when Luna showed up in the area, it seemed like fate was giving us the perfect opportunity." "Luna," Riley mouthed silently to Dr. Valdez, who nodded grimly. The bear had a name, which meant doctor. Chen and Morrison had been in contact with her for some time. Dr. Chen approached the bear, who lifted her massive head in acknowledgement. "Hello, Luna. Thank you for coming when we called. I know this isn't easy for you, being away from your own cubs." The bear made a low, rumbling sound that seemed almost conversational in its tone. Dr. Chen reached into her pocket and pulled out what looked like a small, high-tech communication device. She pressed a button, and a series of soft tones emanated from the device. Luna's ears perked up, and she responded with her own series of gentle sounds. "They're communicating," Tommy whispered incredulously. "That thing is some kind of translation device." Dr. Valdez was beginning to understand the scope of what they had stumbled upon. This wasn't just a rogue medical experiment. It was part of a larger research program that involved training wild animals to participate in healing therapies. The technology Dr. Chen was using suggested resources and funding that went far beyond what a small rural hospital should have access to. Morrison checked his watch. "How much longer do we have before the parents return?" "They're staying at the motel tonight, but they'll be here first thing in the morning. We have maybe 6 more hours before we need to transition Luna back to the forest. And if the treatment works? If Marcus shows the kind of improvement your research predicted?" Dr. Chen looked at the sleeping baby with an expression that mixed scientific fascination with something that might have been genuine care. "Then we'll have proof that our theories are correct. The Institute will be very interested in expanding the program." As they continued their conversation, none of them noticed that baby Marcus had begun to stir again. But Luna noticed immediately. The bear gently moved closer to the crib, and her presence seemed to settle the baby back into peaceful sleep. What was remarkable was that Marcus's hand had somehow worked its way out of his blanket and was now resting against the side of the crib, just inches from Luna's snout. The bear very carefully extended her nose toward the baby's tiny hand, making contact so gentle that it barely constituted a touch. The moment their skin made contact, something extraordinary happened. A soft, almost imperceptible glow seemed to emanate from the point where they touched. It lasted only a few seconds, but all 3 hidden observers saw it clearly. "Did you see that?" Riley whispered, her voice filled with awe and concern. Dr. Valdez nodded, his medical training struggling to process what he had just witnessed. "Some kind of bioluminescence? Or was it a trick of the light?" Tommy was checking his phone recording. "I got it on video. There was definitely some kind of light emanating from where they touched." Dr. Chen and Morrison had also noticed the phenomenon. Dr. Chen quickly checked her monitoring device, and her excitement was barely contained. "Morrison, look at these readings. Marcus's cellular regeneration just spiked by 40%. His respiratory function improved dramatically, and his neurological activity is showing patterns consistent with accelerated healing. How is that possible? We theorized about bioenergetic transfer, but seeing it happen in real time is incredible. Luna isn't just providing emotional comfort, she's somehow facilitating actual physical healing at a cellular level." The implications of what they were witnessing began to sink in for all 6 people in the vicinity of room 314. If what Dr. Chen was claiming was true, they were looking at a breakthrough in medical science that could revolutionize treatment for countless conditions. But the ethical concerns were enormous, especially given that the research was being conducted without proper authorization or informed consent. Luna seemed to sense the heightened attention she was receiving. She lifted her head and looked directly toward the supply closet where Dr. Valdez, Riley, and Tommy were hiding. Her gaze was intelligent and knowing, as if she was aware they had been watching the entire time. "She knows we're here," Tommy whispered. Luna made a soft chuffing sound and tilted her head in a way that seemed almost like an invitation. Dr. Chen noticed Luna's behavior and turned to look in the same direction. "Luna, what is it? Is someone else here?" The bear stood up slowly, her massive form filling much of the room. She walked to the doorway and looked down the hallway toward the supply closet. Her behavior made it clear that she was aware of the hidden observers and was trying to communicate that fact to Dr. Chen and Morrison. "We should check the hallway," Morrison said nervously. "If someone has been watching us." Dr. Chen nodded and began walking toward the door. "Luna's senses are far superior to ours. If she's indicating that someone else is here, we need to find out who it is and how much they've seen." In the supply closet, Dr. Valdez made a quick decision. They had recorded enough evidence to understand what was happening, and they couldn't remain hidden much longer without risking discovery. He whispered to Riley and Tommy, "We need to get out of here and figure out our next move. Follow my lead." As Dr. Chen and Morrison approached their hiding place, Dr. Valdez opened the supply closet door and stepped out, followed by Riley and Tommy. The confrontation that followed would determine not only the fate of baby Marcus and Luna, but potentially the future of an entire field of medical research. "Dr. Valdez," Dr. Chen said, her face showing a mixture of surprise and concern. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "I could ask you the same question, Doctor," Valdez replied, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "But I think the more important question is what you've done to baby Marcus without his parents' knowledge or consent." Morrison stepped forward, his expression defensive. "Dr. Valdez, you don't understand the full scope of what's happening here. This research could save countless lives. By using an infant as an unwitting test subject, by bringing a wild animal into a sterile medical environment, by conducting unauthorized experiments." Dr. Valdez's voice rose slightly, causing Luna to look in his direction with interest rather than alarm. Riley spoke up, her nursing training compelling her to advocate for her patient. "Marcus's parents trusted us to care for their son, not to use him as a laboratory rat. What you've done here violates every ethical standard of medical practice." Tommy held up his phone, showing that he had been recording their conversation. "And it's all documented. The security breach, the unauthorized equipment, the admission that this is part of a larger research program, all of it." Dr. Chen's demeanor shifted as she realized the seriousness of their situation. "You don't understand what you're interfering with. This research is backed by some very powerful people who believe that the potential benefits justify the methods." "What kind of people?" Dr. Valdez demanded. "The Institute for Advanced Biointegration has been developing this technology for years. They've been looking for the right opportunity to test human-animal therapeutic bonding in a real-world medical setting. When Marcus was born with his complications, and when Luna's pack was displaced by the recent forest fires, it created the perfect testing scenario." Luna had been listening to the conversation with apparent understanding, her intelligent eyes tracking the speakers as they talked. Now she moved away from the crib and positioned herself between the two groups of humans, as if she was trying to mediate the conflict. Marcus began to cry softly, his first expression of distress since Luna's arrival. The bear immediately turned her attention to the baby, making her gentle, soothing sounds. But this time, instead of settling back to sleep, Marcus continued to fuss. "His stress levels are rising," Dr. Chen observed, checking her monitoring device. "The conflict in the room is affecting him." Luna looked from the baby to the assembled humans, then back to the baby. She made a series of more urgent sounds, and Dr. Chen consulted her translation device. "She's saying that the baby needs calm. She's asking us to resolve our differences because our tension is interfering with his healing." The revelation that Luna was actively participating in the conversation added yet another layer of complexity to an already extraordinary situation. Dr. Valdez realized that they were dealing with something far beyond a simple case of medical ethics violation. They were at the center of a discovery that could change humanity's understanding of the relationship between humans and animals. But before any of them could respond to Luna's apparent request for peace, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hallway. Someone else was coming, and none of them were prepared for who it would turn out to be. The footsteps were accompanied by urgent voices, and as they grew closer, Dr. Valdez recognized them with a sinking feeling in his stomach. It was Zara and Camden Torres, Marcus's parents, returning to the hospital much earlier than expected. Their voices carried the worry and exhaustion of new parents who had reluctantly left their vulnerable newborn in what they believed was safe, professional care. "I don't care what time it is," Zara's voice carried clearly down the hallway. "I couldn't sleep knowing he was here alone. Something doesn't feel right, Camden. Call it mother's intuition, but I need to see our son." Camden's deeper voice responded with understanding. "You don't need to explain it to me. I've been feeling the same way. Let's just check on him quickly, and if everything looks good, we can try to get some rest in the family room." Dr. Chen's face went pale as she realized their situation had just become exponentially more complicated. Morrison began making urgent gestures toward Luna, but the bear seemed reluctant to leave her position near Marcus's crib. The baby had stopped crying but was still showing signs of restlessness that hadn't been present earlier in the evening. "They can't see Luna here," Morrison whispered urgently. "If they discover what we've been doing." "There's nowhere for her to hide," Riley pointed out, looking around the small hospital room. Luna was far too large to conceal, and the approaching footsteps indicated they had less than a minute before Marcus's parents would arrive. Luna seemed to understand the urgency of the situation. She looked at Marcus one final time, then moved toward the window at the far end of the room. To everyone's amazement, she began manipulating the window latch with her claws, displaying a level of dexterity that seemed impossible for a wild animal. "How does she know how to open the window?" Tommy asked in disbelief. Dr. Chen consulted her translation device and spoke quietly to Luna. The bear responded with a series of soft sounds, then continued working on the window. "She says this isn't the first time she's had to make a quick exit. The Institute trained her for various scenarios." The window opened with a soft click, and Luna looked back at the room one final time. Her gaze lingered on baby Marcus, and she made a soft whimpering sound that seemed filled with reluctance. Then, with surprising grace for such a large animal, she climbed through the window onto the fire escape. Dr. Valdez rushed to the window to see how Luna would manage to leave the building. What he saw made his jaw drop. Luna was moving down the fire escape with practiced ease, but she wasn't alone. On the ground below, barely visible in the shadows, were two smaller bears. Luna's cubs were waiting for her, and they had apparently been there the entire time. "There are more of them," Dr. Valdez whispered to the others. "Luna's cubs have been waiting outside all night." The footsteps in the hallway were now very close, and Dr. Chen quickly began dismantling her monitoring equipment. Morrison was frantically wiping down surfaces to remove any trace of Luna's presence, while Riley and Tommy tried to return the room to its normal appearance. Marcus, as if sensing his guardian's departure, began to cry again. This time, his distress seemed deeper and more inconsolable. The baby's monitor began showing elevated stress levels, and his breathing became more labored. "His vitals are declining rapidly," Riley observed with growing concern. "Whatever healing effect Luna was providing, losing her presence is having the opposite impact." Dr. Chen looked torn between her desire to maintain the secrecy of their experiment and her genuine concern for Marcus's well-being. The separation anxiety is more severe than we anticipated. Luna's presence wasn't just healing him, he was becoming dependent on her bioenergetic field. The voices in the hallway were now directly outside room 314. Zara's maternal instincts had been correct. Something was indeed wrong with her son, and her early return might have been the only thing that could save him from the unintended consequences of the unauthorized experiment. "Mom, Dad, you're back early," came a familiar voice from the hallway. It was Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the pediatric resident who had been working with Marcus since his birth. Her presence meant that Marcus's parents would have medical supervision when they discovered their son's distressed condition. Zara pushed open the door to room 314, followed closely by Camden and Dr. Walsh. What they found was their son crying inconsolably while surrounded by an unusual number of hospital staff for the middle of the night. "What's wrong with Marcus?" Zara demanded, rushing to the crib. "Why is he crying like this? He was fine when we left him." Camden noticed the tension in the room immediately. "Why are all of you here at 2:30 in the morning? Is there something you're not telling us about our son's condition?" Dr. Walsh began examining Marcus while trying to understand the situation herself. "His vitals show significant stress, but I don't see any obvious medical cause. Dr. Valdez, what's been happening here?" Dr. Valdez found himself in an impossible position. The truth would expose Dr. Chen and Morrison's unauthorized experiment, but lying to Marcus's parents about their son's medical care violated everything he believed in as a physician. Before he could respond, Marcus's condition took a dramatic turn for the worse. His breathing became shallow and rapid, and his skin began to take on a pale, bluish tint that indicated oxygen deprivation. The monitors began beeping urgently as his vital signs crashed. "We need to get him to intensive care immediately," Dr. Walsh announced, beginning emergency procedures. "Something is causing severe respiratory distress." As the medical team prepared to move Marcus to the ICU, Zara grabbed Dr. Valdez's arm with tears streaming down her face. "Please, tell me what's happening to my baby. I know something occurred here tonight that you're not telling us about." Outside the window, Luna's anguished roars could be heard echoing from the forest. The bear had sensed Marcus's distress from a distance, and her cries were growing louder and more desperate. Her cubs joined in with their own distressed sounds, creating a chorus of animal anguish that seemed to mirror the human tragedy unfolding inside the hospital. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her face showing the internal struggle between protecting her research and saving Marcus's life. "There might be something we can do, but it would require taking an enormous risk." "What kind of risk?" Camden demanded. "We need to bring Luna back. Marcus's condition deteriorated the moment she left. If our research is correct, her presence is the only thing that can stabilize him now." Zara looked confused and frightened. "Luna? Who is Luna? What are you talking about?" Dr. Valdez made the decision that would change all of their lives. "Luna is a bear. She's been here all night, somehow providing healing energy to your son. I know how insane that sounds, but we have documented evidence of her effect on Marcus's medical condition." The room fell silent, except for the urgent beeping of Marcus's monitors and the distant sound of Luna's calls from the forest. Camden and Zara stared at the assembled medical staff with expressions of disbelief and growing anger. "A bear," Camden repeated slowly. "You're telling us that our critically ill newborn son has been in the presence of a wild bear, and you didn't think to inform us." "It's more complicated than that," Morrison began, but Zara cut him off. "Bring her back," Zara said firmly. "I don't care how crazy this sounds. If this bear can help our son, bring her back right now." Dr. Walsh looked around the room in confusion. Can someone please explain to me what's actually been happening here? Because none of this makes any medical sense. Tommy stepped forward with his phone. I have video evidence of everything. The bear's healing effect on Marcus, the unauthorized experiment, all of it. But right now, we need to focus on saving this baby's life. Marcus's condition continued to deteriorate as they spoke. His oxygen saturation was dropping dangerously low, and standard medical interventions weren't having any effect. The baby, who had been thriving in Luna's presence, was now fighting for his life without her. Dr. Chen pulled out her translation device and began broadcasting the specific tones that had been used to communicate with Luna earlier. Almost immediately, Luna's roars from the forest grew louder and more urgent. She was responding to the call, but it was unclear whether she would return to the hospital or if her cubs would allow her to leave them again. She's coming, Dr. Chen announced, monitoring Luna's response through her device. But we need to prepare everyone for what's about to happen. Luna's presence in the ICU will violate every protocol we have. Dr. Walsh was now fully engaged in trying to stabilize Marcus's breathing, but her medical training was proving inadequate for his mysterious condition. I don't understand what's happening to him. His lungs are clear, his heart is strong, but he's not responding to any of our interventions. The sound of heavy footsteps on the fire escape indicated that Luna was indeed returning. She had left her cubs in the forest and was climbing back up to the third-floor window, driven by what appeared to be maternal instinct toward a human baby she had somehow bonded with. As Luna's massive form appeared at the window, Marcus's cries began to soften. Even before she fully entered the room, the baby's vital signs started showing signs of improvement. The monitors reflected a gradual return to normal heart rate and breathing patterns. It's working, Riley observed with amazement. Just her proximity is helping him. Luna carefully climbed through the window, moving with deliberate caution in the presence of Marcus's parents. Her intelligent eyes assessed the new humans in the room, and she seemed to understand that these were the baby's family. Rather than approaching the crib directly, she positioned herself where Zara and Camden could see her clearly, while still maintaining her connection to Marcus. The moment Luna was fully back in the room, Marcus stopped crying entirely. His breathing normalized, his color returned to healthy pink, and his monitors showed optimal vital signs across all measurements. The transformation was so dramatic and immediate that it left no doubt about the connection between Luna's presence and Marcus's well-being. Zara and Camden stood frozen, watching their newborn son interact peacefully with a creature that should have terrified them. Instead, they found themselves witnessing something that defied all logical explanation, but was undeniably helping their child. "How is this possible?" Camden whispered, his voice filled with awe rather than fear. Luna looked directly at Marcus's parents and made a series of soft, gentle sounds. Dr. Chen consulted her translation device and then looked up with an expression of surprise. "She's asking for your permission to continue helping Marcus. She's acknowledging that he's your baby, and she wants your consent to provide her healing presence." The request transformed Luna from a wild animal conducting an unauthorized experiment into something closer to a medical practitioner seeking informed consent. The ethical implications were staggering, but Marcus's improved condition made the choice feel clear to his parents. Zara approached Luna slowly, her maternal instincts overriding her fear. "You've been protecting my son," she said softly. "You've been taking care of him when I couldn't be here." Luna responded with a gentle sound and carefully extended her snout toward Zara's hand. The contact was brief but profound, and Zara felt a warmth and sense of peace that she couldn't explain. "Yes," Zara said firmly. "You have our permission to help our son. But I want to understand everything. I want to know how this is possible and what it means for Marcus's future." Dr. Chen nodded, recognizing that the time for secrecy had passed. "Then, you need to know about the Institute for Advanced Biointegration and the research that brought Luna to your son, because this is only the beginning of what we've discovered about the healing potential of human-animal bonding." As the night continued, they all realized they were about to become part of something that would challenge everything the medical world thought it knew about healing, consciousness, and the connections between different species. Dr. Chen moved toward her tablet and began accessing files that required multiple security clearances. What I'm about to show you is classified research that has been ongoing for over a decade. The Institute for Advanced Biointegration has been studying cases of spontaneous healing that occur when humans form deep connections with specific animals. She pulled up a series of medical files that showed patients with various conditions. Children with autism who had made breakthrough progress after bonding with dolphins, elderly patients with Alzheimer's whose cognitive function improved dramatically in the presence of certain dogs, and cancer patients whose tumor growth slowed or stopped entirely when paired with particular cats. "Every case follows the same pattern, Doctor," Chen explained, as Marcus's parents studied the files with growing amazement. "The animal chooses the human, not the other way around. There's some kind of energetic compatibility that we're only beginning to understand." Camden looked up from the tablet. "You're saying that Luna chose Marcus? But how is that possible? He's only 3 days old." "That's what makes this case so extraordinary," Morrison interjected. "Usually, these connections form over time through repeated exposure. But Luna sought out Marcus from the moment he was born. The Forest Service reports show that she began moving toward the hospital the same day Marcus came into the world." Luna, who had been quietly maintaining her position near the crib, suddenly lifted her head and made a series of urgent sounds. Dr. Chen quickly consulted her translation device, and her expression grew concerned. "She's saying that someone is coming. Someone who isn't supposed to be here yet." Dr. Valdez moved to the window and looked out toward the parking lot. 3 black SUVs were pulling into the hospital's emergency entrance, their occupants moving with the purposeful efficiency of people accustomed to handling sensitive situations. "The Institute," Dr. Chen said grimly. "They weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow morning." "What does that mean for us?" Zara asked, instinctively moving closer to Marcus's crib. Morrison was already gathering up his equipment. "It means our unauthorized research has been discovered by people who have the power to shut down this entire hospital if they choose to. The Institute doesn't take kindly to deviations from their approved protocols." Tommy continued recording everything on his phone while keeping watch at the door. "How many people are we talking about?" "Probably a full research team," Dr. Chen replied. "Scientists, security personnel, maybe even government officials. When the Institute moves, they move with complete authority." Luna seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. She looked at Marcus, then at his parents, and made a soft whimpering sound that conveyed distress. Dr. Chen's translation device indicated that Luna was asking whether she should leave to protect Marcus's family from potential complications. "No," Zara said firmly, before anyone else could respond. "I don't care who these people are, or what authority they think they have. My son needs Luna, and she's not going anywhere." Dr. Walsh, who had been trying to process everything she had witnessed, stepped forward. "As the attending physician for Marcus Torres, I need to state for the record that this patient's condition has improved dramatically in the presence of this animal. Whatever is happening here has clear medical benefits that cannot be ignored." The sound of footsteps in the hallway indicated that the Institute's team had reached the 3rd floor. Unlike the earlier approaches they had heard throughout the night, These footsteps were numerous and carried the weight of people who expected immediate compliance with their demands. Dr. Chen made a quick decision. Luna, hide near the window, but stay close enough to maintain your connection to Marcus. Everyone else, let me do the talking. The Institute has legal authority that supersedes hospital administration, but they need to follow certain protocols when dealing with unauthorized research. A woman in her 50s entered the room, followed by 6 other individuals who clearly represented various specialties. She wore a severe business suit and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Her eyes immediately assessed the room, noting the presence of Marcus's parents, the medical staff, and the lingering traces of Luna's recent presence. "Dr. Sarah Chen," the woman said in a crisp, authoritative voice. "I'm Director Catherine Reeves from the Institute for Advanced Biointegration. You've been conducting unauthorized research using our protocols and our trained subject. This is a serious breach of our agreement." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her posture defensive but professional. "Director Reeves, I can explain the circumstances. The opportunity presented itself unexpectedly, and the initial results have been remarkable. The initial results are irrelevant when they're obtained through violations of our security protocols," Director Reeves replied. "Where is Luna?" "Our tracking systems show that she's been in this building for over 4 hours." Luna remained hidden near the window, but Marcus began to show signs of agitation as the tension in the room increased. His monitors reflected elevated stress levels, and he started making the soft crying sounds that had become associated with Luna's absence. Zara moved protectively toward her son's crib. "I don't know who you people are, but this is my son, and I want to know what you've done to him." Director Reeves studied Zara with calculating eyes. "Mrs. Torres, your son has been participating in advanced medical research that could benefit millions of people. The Institute has been developing therapeutic protocols that harness the healing potential of human-animal bonding." "Without our knowledge or consent," Camden interjected angrily. "You've been experimenting on our newborn baby without even telling us." The research required specific conditions that couldn't be achieved with traditional informed consent procedures, one of Director Reeves's team members explained. "The bioenergetic bonding process only works when it occurs naturally, without the interference of human expectations or anxieties." Dr. Valdez couldn't remain silent any longer. "You're talking about using sick patients as unknowing test subjects. That violates every ethical standard in medical research." Director Reeves turned her attention to Dr. Valdez with a cold stare. "Dr. Valdez, the Institute operates under federal authority that supersedes local medical ethics committees. Our research has the potential to revolutionize treatment for conditions that current medicine cannot address." As the confrontation continued, none of them noticed that Luna was no longer hiding by the window. The bear had somehow moved to a position directly behind Director Reeves's team, and her presence went undetected until she made a soft sound that caused everyone to turn around. "Luna," Director Reeves said, her stern demeanor softening slightly, "there you are. You've caused quite a stir by leaving your designated research area." Luna looked directly at Director Reeves and made a series of sounds that clearly conveyed displeasure. Dr. Chen consulted her translation device and then looked up with surprise. "She's saying that the baby needed her help, and that the Institute's protocols were wrong to keep her confined when a child was suffering. Luna doesn't make decisions about research protocols," Director Reeves replied firmly. "She follows the instructions she's been given through her training." Luna responded with what could only be described as a growl of disagreement. She moved closer to Marcus's crib and positioned herself protectively between the baby and the Institute team. Her message was clear. She was not going to abandon Marcus simply because the Institute demanded it. Marcus, sensing Luna's protective presence, immediately calmed down. His vital signs normalized, and he settled back into peaceful sleep. The dramatic improvement was visible to everyone in the room, including Director Reeves's team. The bonding appears to be stronger than anticipated, one of the Institute scientists observed. The subject's physiological responses to Luna's presence are beyond our projected parameters. Director Reeves studied the situation carefully. Dr. Chen, what are the infant's baseline medical conditions? Marcus was born with respiratory complications and irregular heart rhythms. Standard treatments were having limited success until Luna's arrival. Since then, his condition has stabilized completely, but he shows severe distress when separated from her. Dependency formation, another Institute scientist noted. The bioenergetic bonding has created a therapeutic relationship that cannot be safely terminated abruptly. Zara stepped forward, her maternal instincts driving her to advocate for her son, despite the intimidating presence of the Institute team. What does that mean for Marcus? Are you saying he needs Luna to survive? Director Reeves exchanged glances with her team before responding. It means that your son has become part of a research study that we need to complete properly. The Institute will need to monitor his progress and Luna's responses for an extended period. How extended? Camden demanded. Possibly months. These bonding relationships develop over time, and we need to understand their long-term implications. Dr. Walsh interjected with growing concern. You're talking about keeping a wild bear in a hospital environment for months? That's completely impractical and potentially dangerous. The Institute has facilities specifically designed for this type of research, Director Reeves explained. Marcus and Luna would be transferred to our main research campus, where they can be properly monitored and studied. The suggestion that Marcus would be taken away from them sent both parents into immediate panic. Zara moved to stand directly beside Luna, recognizing that the bear was currently their strongest ally in protecting their son. You're not taking our baby anywhere, Zara said with fierce determination. If Luna needs to stay with Marcus, then they'll both stay here, where we can be with our son. Luna seemed to understand the conflict and made a series of sounds to Dr. Chen's translation device. The message that came through surprised everyone in the room. She's offering a compromise, Doctor, Chen announced. Luna says she will participate in the Institute's research, but only if Marcus remains with his parents, and only if her own cubs are allowed to visit her regularly. Director Reeves looked startled by Luna's apparent ability to negotiate the terms of her own participation in the research. That's not how our protocols work. Research subjects don't dictate the conditions of their involvement. Luna responded with a sound that Dr. Chen's device translated as something equivalent to, "Then find a better way." The bear's assertion of agency in her own research participation created a completely new dynamic that none of the Institute personnel had anticipated. They were dealing with a research subject who was intelligent enough to understand the implications of the study and confident enough to demand better treatment. Tommy, who had been quietly documenting everything, stepped forward. I think there's something else you all need to consider. This entire situation has been recorded, and the footage shows clear evidence of unauthorized medical experimentation on an infant. If this goes public without some kind of satisfactory resolution, it's going to be a public relations nightmare for everyone involved. Director Reeves realized that their situation had become far more complex than a simple case of unauthorized research. They were dealing with parents who wouldn't be silenced, medical staff who had witnessed extraordinary healing, and a research subject who was demanding better treatment. We need to find a solution that protects everyone's interests, she said finally. Marcus's health, Luna's welfare, the Institute's research, and the family's rights. As they began to discuss possible compromises, none of them noticed that Luna's cubs had somehow made their way into the hospital building. The sound of small paws in the hallway indicated that the situation was about to become even more complicated. The soft padding of tiny feet grew closer, and suddenly 2 small bear cubs appeared in the doorway of room 314. They were perhaps 4 months old, their fur still carrying the lighter coloring of youth, and their eyes held the same remarkable intelligence that their mother displayed. Without hesitation, they walked directly to Luna, who greeted them with gentle nuzzling sounds. "This is unprecedented," Director Reeves said, her professional composure finally showing cracks. How did they navigate a hospital building? How did they know exactly where to find Luna? Dr. Chen consulted her translation device as Luna communicated with her cubs. The sounds were soft and melodic, clearly a form of family conversation that carried complex information. "She's explaining the situation to them," Dr. Chen announced with wonder. "She's telling them about Marcus and asking them to meet him." The larger of the 2 cubs approached Marcus's crib with careful, deliberate steps. Under Luna's watchful guidance, the cub stood on its hind legs and peered over the edge of the crib at the sleeping baby. Marcus stirred slightly, opening his eyes to see the young bear looking down at him. What happened next defied every expectation in the room. Marcus smiled, his first real smile since birth, and reached out his tiny hand toward the cub. The young bear gently extended its nose to make contact with the baby's fingers, and the same soft glow that had occurred between Luna and Marcus now emanated from the touch between the cub and the baby. "Impossible," whispered one of the Institute scientists. "The bioenergetic transfers occurring with the offspring as well. This suggests a hereditary component to the healing ability." The second cub joined its sibling at the crib, and Marcus's delight was obvious. He made happy cooing sounds and waved his arms excitedly, showing more energy and alertness than he had displayed since his birth. His monitors reflected optimal vital signs across every measurement. Zara found herself crying as she watched her son interact with the bear family. "They're protecting him," she said through her tears. "All of them. They're treating him like he's one of their own." Luna looked directly at Zara and made a series of sounds that Dr. Chen's device translated as, "He is one of ours now." Cubs must be protected by the whole family. Director Reeves realized that the situation had evolved far beyond anything the Institute had encountered before. "A family unit," she murmured. "They've formed a family unit with a human infant. This challenges everything we thought we knew about cross-species bonding." Camden stepped closer to the crib, no longer afraid of the bears, but instead feeling a strange sense of gratitude. What does this mean for Marcus's future? Will he always need them? Luna turned to her cubs and made soft sounds that seemed to be instructions. The cubs responded by moving to different positions around the crib, as if they were taking up guard posts. Then Luna approached Zara and Camden, making a series of gentle sounds. Dr. Chen listened to the translation and looked up with amazement. "She's saying that Marcus will grow strong with their help, but that he will also learn to be strong on his own. She says the bond will teach him things that no human can teach, but that he belongs with his human family. She's offering partnership," Dr. Walsh observed with wonder. "Not dependency, but partnership in raising this child." Director Reeves found herself facing a decision that would reshape the Institute's entire approach to their research. The Bears were offering voluntary participation in a long-term study, but on their own terms and with their own conditions. It was collaboration rather than experimentation. "What would you propose?" Director Reeves asked Luna directly, a sentence she never imagined she would speak. Luna's response through the translation device was clear and comprehensive. She would work with the Institute to understand the healing process, but Marcus would remain with his parents. The bear family would maintain their wild lifestyle in the forest, but would visit regularly to continue the bonding process. Any research would be conducted with full transparency and with the consent of all parties, human and bear alike. "She's rewriting the rules of scientific research," Tommy said in amazement, "still recording everything. She's demanding ethical treatment for both the human and animal participants." Dr. Valdez stepped forward, his medical training finally finding a framework for what he was witnessing. This isn't just about healing, he realized. This is about evolution, about humans and animals finding new ways to help each other survive and thrive. Zara looked at Luna with deep gratitude. "You saved our son's life, but more than that, you've given us something we never knew was possible. You've given us family." Luna approached Zara one final time and gently touched her hand with her nose. The warmth and peace that Zara felt was unmistakable, a sense of connection that transcended species and spoke to something fundamental about the bonds that could exist between all living creatures. Director Reeves made her decision. "The Institute will accept Luna's terms. We'll establish a new research protocol that respects the autonomy and intelligence of our animal partners. This could be the beginning of an entirely new field of collaborative healing." As dawn broke through the hospital windows, Marcus lay peacefully in his crib, surrounded by his human parents and his adoptive bear family. His monitors showed the steady rhythms of perfect health, but more importantly, his face showed the contentment of a child who knew he was deeply loved and protected. Luna's cubs curled up on the floor beside the crib, while Luna herself took her now familiar position as guardian. The unusual family had found their rhythm, and the healing that had begun with one sick baby was already spreading to everyone who witnessed their remarkable bond. 6 months later, Marcus Torres would be known as the healthiest, happiest baby in the region. He would grow up bilingual, speaking both human language and the complex communication system of his bear family. The Institute's research would revolutionize medicine, establishing new protocols for animal-assisted healing that were based on partnership rather than exploitation. Luna's cubs would become the first generation of bears trained from birth to work alongside human medical professionals, but always by choice, and always with the full support of their family unit. The forest around Maplewood General Hospital would become a protected sanctuary where human and animal families could visit and learn from each other. But perhaps most importantly, the story of Luna and Marcus would prove that love, protection, and healing could transcend every boundary that humans thought separated them from the rest of the natural world. The mother bear, who slept on the hospital floor beside a crib, had awakened something profound in everyone who witnessed her devotion. Years later, when people asked Zara and Camden about that extraordinary night, they would always say the same thing. "We thought we were just trying to save our son's life. We never imagined we were helping to save the world." Luna's legacy would live on in every child who grew up knowing that they were connected to all living creatures, and in every animal who learned that humans could be trusted partners in the great work of healing the world. The bond that began in a small hospital room would ripple outward, touching countless lives and proving that sometimes the most impossible things are actually the most necessary. The mother bear's vigil had ended, but her gift to humanity was just beginning.